Mhm. Okay, perfect. So, Tashdali to everyone who are present here for our third day of the 21-day course. And today we will be uh, studying the second chapter, which is the chapter on the first grammatical case, and the recompound particles. So we will be studying about these. So some things that we will have to understand is that in Tibetan, like we said, that the structure of language is based on the idea that the most smallest individual sound that is able to function both as a sound and also a meaning is called the consonant. And that when we combine consonants, we get syllable. When we combine syllable, we get word. When we or names in Tibetan, we just call them name. So when we combine the name, then we get sentences. And when we combine sentences, then we have an entire dialogue or an entire piece of writing. So So when we discuss the concept of the first grammatical case, we have to encounter the concept of name and word. So in Tibetan, a name is a compound or a combination. So it's something that is made of two or more than two letters. So when two or more than two basic sounds, vowels and consonants, when they are combined, so there is when they are combined, it forms a name. And names are the combination of these letters. When they come together, they form this structure. And this particular structure, this very structure, what it does is that it actually represents a name. So it is used for calling out an object. So when we see an object, for example, we have a pillar or a vase. So we call it vase, and this is known as name. So the name is combination of two or more letters, uh, and this structure, which we use to call something an object or phenomena, is known as name or Ming. So the name in Tibetan, in grammatical system, is classified in two. The first one is the actual name, and the second one is the designated name. So the actual name, it is the name of an object, which actually represents the object. So uh, this is these are all the names that you give to an object, uh, in which the very name that we give to the object represents the object itself. It's the name of that very object. So this comes from the idea that what we do in our tradition is that sometimes we have certain word that we think is very good. It's a very good word to be used also as a name that we give to the children, to people. But we see that one type of these names are the name of the actual thing, whereas the other name is a name that's given something, to something that doesn't actually represent the thing. So let me clarify this. So actual name, like for example, in Tibetan, we have actual name like Chu. Chu means water. So when we say Chu or water, the very name Chu, it means water, and that it does not mean anything else. So these are the actual name. So for example, if you have a name like Senge, Senge means lion, and the name Senge represents the animal lion. So these are the actual name, the names that represents the very object that it is referring to are known as the actual name, And so the definition is these are names that represents the actual object or the phenomena. So it is a name that that represents the very object or very phenomena that we are calling it by. And the actual name has two types. The first one is actual name, which is with logic and reference. And the other one is actual name that is without logic and reference. The actual name without logic and reference are the names that we give. So these are the most fundamental type of names, the most basic type of names that we give to anything. And when we think about why is it called this way, we don't have any idea why it is being called this in such a manner. So for example, let's say in Tibetan, we have the word ri. And when we go and try to find, ri means mountain. But when we go and try to find the meaning of the word ri, we will find that it is just a sound that was given to the mountain. And therefore, it was called ri. And this actually is an actual name, because when we say ri, it actually symbolizes or represents the mountain itself. But when we try to justify, when we try to rationalize why is it called ri, we will not get any answer, because these were the most fundamental type of names, the names that were given to the things without the very logic and without any logic or without any reference, because these are the first type of words. These are the most basic type of words. They don't have any other words to refer to, and therefore these are actual names without logic and reference. The second one is actual name with logic and reference. Now in Tibetan, let's say, so in Tibetan, let's say we have name here as I have written, Kablento. So this is an actual name with logic and reference. So we're calling it Kablento. This is actually a name which is derived from it's actually derived from three basic words. The first one is kap, which means needle. Second one is len, which means to take or to carry. And do means stone. So kablen do means it's a stone that is used to pick up needles. So these in old times in Tibet, the Tibetan people, what they used to do is that they used to use magnet, and then they used to stick all the needles on the magnet so that the needles would not fall down, and then they would not be able to find it. You know, once they fall, when they fall down into like in a patch of grass or somewhere there, or in the sand, and when they try to find it, they're unable to find it. So therefore, they used to stick all of them on the magnet. And so the name of the magnet is called kablendo. Kablendo means a stone that is used to retrieve needles. So here we see that there is actually a logic and a certain type of reference that has been used, even though it is an actual name, because this actually refers to the magnet. Then we have another example here of actual name with logic and references, Xing De. The word Xing means tree. The word De means fruit or product or result. So something that is result or fruit of a tree. And this is, Xing De refers to fruit. So an apple, a banana. So that is the result of that tree. Therefore, we call it Xing De, the result of the tree. And so it is an actual name which originates with logic and reference. And then in English, we see name like, for example, in Tibetan, we have name like Tashi. So this refers to the, this Tashi means prosperity. But these type of words were originated in the very beginning, the most fundamental words. Therefore, there is no certain reference. Then we have English names such as shooting star. So it's like the comets when they fly through the sky, they make this trajectory, which looks like a bullet which is which has been shot from a gun. So therefore, shooting star. So these are all actual names because the shooting star actually refers to the very thing that is the comet, but it's called the shooting star because of a certain particular way it is traveling in the space. So there is a logic and reference here. So therefore, these are the actual name. Actual name meaning these represents the very thing that they are referring to. And then the other type, the second type of names is the designated names. Designated names are the names which are given to something, but the name, the thing to which it has been given to is not the actual thing that has been that the name has given to. For example, in Tibetan tradition, we have names like for girls. Normally, we have the name called Pema. Pema means lotus, but here we are designating this name to a person. So when we say Pema, normally it should symbolize the lotus, but here when we are calling Pema, what we're doing is that we're actually not actually referring to the lotus flower, but we are referring to a person to whom this name is being designated. So therefore, you see the difference between the actual name Pema, which would refer to the lotus flower, and the designated name Pema, which refers to the name Pema to a person. And when we go and check if that person is the very name that has been given to that person, then that is not the case. Then similarly, we have this another example like the Senge. Senge means lion, but sometimes we call like we give our pets like dogs the name Senge. For whatever reason it may be, we call them Senge. But now the thing is that even though we call them Senge, which is lion, but the dog is not a lion. So therefore the name Senge or lion is being designated. Then similarly, we have these English name, like for people, we call some people Joy. And Joy is just a designated name for those people. It doesn't mean that those people are actual joy, you know, because joy is a feeling, and this joy is referring to a person. So, and here we have the designated name without logic and reference. Sorry, with logic and reference. So here, the names that are given are designated, meaning that they don't actually represent the thing itself, but it's given because of a certain characteristic of the thing that we're designating it to. For example, Damge, which means born from mud. So this is a name that is used for lotus, because lotus are born from the mud. So they are also called Damge. But this is a designated name and not an actual name. Similarly, we like for certain reason, like for certain characteristic, we can call someone Tajian. Ta means nose, Qian means big. So if someone has a facial feature where they have a big nose, we call them Tajian. I mean, it's up to us whether to call it or not, but still, these are designated. And then English names such as iron fist. It doesn't mean that the fist is made of iron. It just means that it has the characteristic that it is very strong and very hard, you know, therefore iron fist. So you see that the primary difference between the actual and the designated name is the fact that the actual name refers to the thing that it has been imputed or given to, whereas the designated name does not represent the actual thing to which it has been imputed to. So these are the two different types of name. One is the actual name. The other one is the designated name. And there are two subgroups of each of them. The first one is the actual name without logic and reference, which are the most fundamental names of which you cannot find any reason or logic why they were called in this manner. The other one is actual name with logic and reference. These names, which when you go and find the reason why it has been named in such a manner, you can actually find a reasoning and reference to previous terms. Similarly, designated name has two types, two subgroups. First one is designated name without logic and reference. So these are designated names which does not have any logic or reasoning. It's just a name that someone wanted to give. So for example, someone wanted to give their children a name Pema. So therefore it is called Pema. And the second one is designated name with logic and reference, like Damge or Nache or Iron Fist, which are names given to the things, designated to the things, but with a certain character. So these are the two different types of names. So now we're going to go to the second type of combination of letters that we have, the structure. This is called word or tsik. So one may ask, what's the difference between word and name? And in Tibetan Tibetan system, grammatical system, the most general term is name, which we call Ming, but that Ming or name is not the Ming or name that we just discussed. This one is the subgroup of that one. So this is the second type. This is the second type of Ming, which is the word. And the difference is that the Ming or the name that we learned before, those only represents the name of things, place, object, phenomena. Those are only names that those in other terms, those are only noun. So those are the names which represents only the noun, whereas tsik or word are the names which represents everything else. So under the category tsik, we have the action word, the descriptive word, the connective particles, the accompanying word, and the ornamental words. And out of this, we have to understand that only 1, 2, and 3, the action word, the descriptive word, the ornamental word, these three are the ones which have a meaning by its own meaning when we are reading it by themselves, or when we are writing these three, the action word, the descriptive word, and the ornamental word, they have a meaning of their own. Whereas connective particles and the accompanying word, they don't have a meaning of their own. It's only when they are added to a sentence or are added to a word that they start making sense. So therefore, we have to be very careful, because the 30 mostly revolves around this one, connective particles. So whenever we're talking about connective particles, one must understand that it will change meaning according to the word that it has been connected to. So therefore, the very concept that we must understand is the usage of each connective particles, rather than trying to seek the meaning of each connective particles. The problem with that will be that later on, what will happen is that you will think that, oh, in this sentence, this connective particle means this, so this must mean only this one. It must only mean in this way. But later, when you see it in a different sentence, you'll find that it will be translated into completely different meaning. For example, if in one sentence it's being translated as of, in other sentence it could be translated as is, and then you'll be thinking, what is the rules about these things? It seems that these things do not follow any rule. And the thing is that it's not that the connective particles are wrong in this case. It's just that the way we are analyzing it, what we're doing is that we're trying to understand the meaning of the connective particles, where in reality, connective particles by themselves don't have any fixed meaning. So therefore, we must understand the meanings of these connective particles by referring them to the word that it has been added to or connected to. Action words are any word in Tibetan which shows action. For example, sawa means to eat, jongwa means to study, deba means to sit, lopa means to teach. So these are the words that actually shows action. So these are action words. Second one is descriptive words. Descriptive words are words in Tibetan which describe something. For example, chenpo, chungjung, ringbu. Chenpo means big, chungjung means small, ringbu means tall, tungdung means short. So these words are all descriptive words. And the ornamental words, these are the words that are used mostly in poem and poetry. So these are mostly words that are being used in poetry, and we will clarify. We will do more clarification on this one when those of you, if you would continue then and join us for our class on poetry, Tibetan poetry. We will continue this one in those courses. So our main goal here is to understand about this one, which is the connective particles. But in any case, all of these comes under the group word or tik. Okay, so the grammatical case one, or the first grammatical case. So when we talk about the first grammatical case, we must understand that what is a grammatical case? So grammatical case, these are connective particles that separates words and names in a sentence. So a grammatical case or namye are the particles that we are using in a sentence. So one must remember, in Tibetan language, whenever you are making a sentence, there are three important parts that should be there. There should be a name, there should be a word, and there should be a grammatical case. Sorry, there should be a connective particle. So first, so the three things that should, so this thing I will be clarifying it again and again with each of the particles. So the three things that should be in a Tibetan sentence is a name, a word, and a connective particle. So therefore, every sentence in Tibetan has a name, a word, and a connective particle. So therefore, if we are able to differentiate those, then the syntax or the structure of making sentence in Tibetan becomes so much easier. So grammatical cases, these are connective particles. So these are one of the connective particles. So what's the function of this connective particles? What it does is that whenever you're writing a sentence, it will separate a sentences, the name of a sentence from another name of a sentence or word of a sentence. So what it will do is that it will separate a name of a sentence from a word of a sentence, so that it will come in between these two. So it will connect two separate words and name. So this is the function of grammatical case, and there are 8 grammatical cases. The first, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, and the 8th grammatical case, and we will learn about all of them in this course. So the one we're tackling today is the first case, or the first grammatical case, known as namye tangbo. Namye means grammatical case, tangbo means first. So the first grammatical case is known as ngo zamdemba. So what does ngo zamdemba? Ngo means nature, zam means only, demba means depict. Meaning that these connective particles, they only depict the nature, meaning that what it does is that it only separates a name from a word, meaning it creates the it creates the individuality of each single name and each single word. So when we actually describe or explain the first case, many of you will feel like, oh, the first case doesn't seem to be separating anything, because when we say what are the first case, we only say that the first case is name and word, and that's it. Then many of you may ask like, oh, in that case, what's the difference between the usual name, word, and the first case? And in that manner, we will say that, oh, the one we talked about, the name and word in the beginning of today's class, those are general groups of the name and word. Whereas the first case, what it does is that it gives a singular identity to each of these name and word, meaning it states that each name that we're using or each word we are using will have their own individual meaning without being mixed with any other name or word. And this itself is known as the first case. So it's actually much more interesting than how it sounds. But what the first case teaches us is that every single phenomena has a name and a word that describes that name. And the very essence of each of these phenomena, though you're describing the essence in the sense of action, or you're describing this phenomena's essence in the sense of description, or you're actually referring to the essence of the phenomena in the sense of name only. When we are talking about the name, we will not think about the action of this name, or we will not talk about the description of this name. And therefore, it actually, what it does is that it holds an individual meaning for each of its aspect. And that individual aspect of that very word or name is being protected by the first case. So the definition is, it is the grammatical case that only depicts the essence of a phenomena through name or word. So it depicts the essence of a word, a phenomena, and it depicts the essence of each of these phenomena through either name, which just represents the phenomena itself, be it designated or actual, or it will depict the essence through the action. So for example, if we say, or we can say through description, if we say, 这戏, we understand that this very name, it only represents 特戏. So when we say 特戏, we'll always only think about 特戏 as a name. But now when we say 千波, if we actually connect the word 千波 with 特戏, what will happen is that immediately what will happen is that our thought will be shifted from just recognizing 特戏 as an existence to actually describing 特戏 being big or tall. And now if we say sawa, now our mind, what it will do is that it will shift its concentration from 特戏 being big to the fact that 特戏 eats. So the thing is that it just shifts from just representing the name to just representing the description to just representing the action. And this function that it does each time when we are talking about different aspect or different aspect of 特戏 is because of the first case, which is 我怎么办, depicting the nature only. So nature in the form of name, nature or essence in the form of action, or nature or essence only in the form of description. So this is the function of the first case. Okay, so now the first case is being accompanied by the recompound particles. So also known as lerdu. So from the text, it states, it states that ko, ngo, to, no, po, mo, ho, ro, lo, so, to. 11 of these particles are known as the recompound particles. And these are also called zoksik. And in Tibetan, the word lerdu is the word we use for recompound particles, but it can also be called zoksik, which means the conclusive word, or dedu, which means conclusion of a conclusion of a combination of words. So, definition. It is a particle that follows the last word of a current narration. So if we're talking, for example, if someone is talking about their, like for example, let's say that someone is talking about their, so recently we had the celebration of His Holiness birthday. So someone was talking about what they did during that day and all of this. So we see that in that moment when they're talking about it, they're narrating something. So if they're talking in Tibetan, and then at the end, if they're going to conclude everything that they have started saying from the beginning to this point, they use the recompound particles. So these particles, which follows the last word, so it always follows the last word of the current narration. So, okay, let's just go with this, and I'll tell it to you after this. So according to its suffix, so these recompound particles, these are dependent connective particles. So when we say dependent and independent connective particles, what we're saying is that the dependent connective particles, they depend on either the suffix or a certain criteria to which it can follow a word or a name. Whereas the independent connective particles, they can follow any name they wish to follow, regardless of any rules that pertains to suffix or any other rules, though there is the rules that has been implemented by their own function in a sentence. But other than that, they can follow any word that they want in the context of a sentence. So the other thing is that when they follow the last word of a narration, they have to look at the suffix letter of the last letter. The last word. What is the suffix letter of the last word, or either if the last word even has a suffix or not. So according to those rules, these 11 recompound particles that we just discussed earlier will follow the end of a narration. And whenever we see these recompound particles like ro, to, mo, ho, or any one of those 11, it means that the point where we see it to the point it was beginning, all of these comes under a same narration, meaning it started from the beginning, and now when we see this recompound particle, it states that it has already concluded. Now whatever should be stated after this will be about different thing. It won't be anything that is related. It may be something which has a slight relation with something that's been spoken earlier, but in most contexts it will be totally unrelated. So there are two different narration now. So this can be used in narration, like in dialogues or plays or stories where one person has already finished talking. So when a certain person or a character has finished talking, so we can use these recompound particles to show that, oh, this is the point where they have stopped speaking. So this is called the recompound particles. So now about the current narration that I was talking, a current narration or narrative could be just a single word. It could be just a single name. For example, semso, and that's it. This is the beginning is sem and the end is so, and that's the conclusion of one narrative. It can also be a sentence, for example, te te chishikenno, which means it has started from te and it has concluded at no, which means everything in between te and no is a part of one narrative. Then it can also be used in a sense where the narrative could be more than one sentences. For example, Tashi ni puya pushigre. Tashi is a good boy. Koni nintar lobta mache ba doa tang tadung lobjong yabu. So this is a little incorrect. So the tengbo has to be on pa. But in any case, so cheki, it means that Tashi is a good boy. He always goes to school without being absent, and on that he's studying well. So we see there are three sentences, and now from the point to the point ta of tashi to to, everything in between becomes the part of this narrative. And now you can see that it has started. So you can see that it has started at lok pa, and then it has ended at do, meaning this is a narrative as a writing where it consists multiple paragraphs. So therefore, the function of the recompound particle is to show that from this point onward, everything that has been from the beginning to this point onward, they all belong to a single narrative. And then everything in between is related to each other. And now whatever that is going to be stated after this will either have a very little relevance or no relevance to the things that have been stated in the earlier narrative. So this is what the lerdu is. Lerdu or recompound particles are the particles that just tells us here it concludes. This is the point where one narrative is finished. Now the second one will begin. It can be a single word. It can be a sentence. It could be multiple sentence. It can be a paragraph. It could be multiple paragraphs. So it depends on how long the narrative is and how much description is there in this narrative. So the usage of these recompound particles, as we see, is to show us that from this point where the recompound particle has been stated, everything ahead of it, it actually belongs to the same narrative. In cases where this recompound word has another recompound word that has preceded it, that means that anything that starts after that recompound particle to this recompound particle will be in one narrative. It will be in one narrative. Okay, so since we have discussed that the recompound particles are dependent particles, so all the dependent particles have something called connecting or particles based on suffix letter, also known as da, jor. Here, da refers to sound or the consonant. Actually, here the consonant. Jor means connecting the consonants and names on the basis of the 10 suffix letters. So from the root text, it says, "Lekshen jongale chayu todang tameo shenam mingte jitunjar." Okay, so here, first thing that we must understand is the word tak. Word tak is the abbreviated form, meaning the short form of the word taktar. And taktar is a way of saying, or it's a name for the post-suffix letter ta. So we have learned that there are prefix letters, there are foundation of name, there are suffix letters, and then there are letters which comes after the suffix letters, the post-suffix letters. And there are two post-suffix letters, ta and sa. and the post-suffix letter ta is also known as chak tar. So here it says chak yu. Chak yu means to possess. So it says that if a name Ming has a post-suffix letter ta, then it should be followed by the recompound word to. So chak yu to, meaning a name that consists of the post-suffix letter ta, which is the chak or chaktar, should be followed by the recompound word to. Ta. Okay, so interesting. This name ta, the word ta, also known as Mingta. We can either call it Mingta. Ming means a word, so it has the equivalent meaning of the word in English. So Ming ta means the end or the tail. So the end of a name or a word is the suffix letter. So Mingta or ta means the 10th suffix letter. So ta means 10th suffix letter. Me means does not possess. So the word that does not possess the 10th suffix letter should be followed by ho, hanaro ho. And then it states shenam. Shenam means the other. So we have seen there are 11 of these recompound particles. So to and ho follows in such a manner where to follows after the post suffix after the word or name which has the post suffix letter ta, and ho follows any word that doesn't have the 10 suffix letters, any of the 110 suffix letters, and all the rest, which are the other 9 particles, they should follow Mingta. Mingta means suffix. They should follow according to the suffix, which means that, for example, here we see this is the word she. Po shata she. Here the suffix letter is ta. So the recompound particle that should follow it should be similar to this, but with naro. So it becomes to. If it is na, it becomes no. If it's nga, it becomes ngo. If it's sa, the suffix letter, I'm referring to the suffix letter. It doesn't mean that it will happen with just sa. It has to be a sa which is positioned at the suffix letter. It becomes so. So if you would look at the note that I have sent you, page number 7 of 8, where I have given you examples of these. So if you would look at page number 7, you have the table that says connecting of recompound particles based on suffix letters. Okay, so here we see that we have jinjuk, which is the suffix letter ka, and we have the usage of this with the recompound particle. It is paka pak kanaroko pakko. So we see that in this example, the suffix letter is ka, and therefore it is followed by the recompound particle ko. And then the second one, mango, where the suffix letter is nga and the recompound particle is ngo. And then there is ne, where the suffix letter is ta and the recompound particle is to. Then we have a pen. So this is pen. So in any case, the suffix letter is na, so it's been followed by no. We have sub, where the suffix letter is pa, followed by po. Kam, suffix letter is ma, followed by mo. Ta, suffix letter is ha, followed by ho. Pur, where the suffix letter is ra, followed by ro. And then if you look at the page 8 of 8, you'll see pel, where the suffix letter is la, followed by lo. Se, suffix letter sa, followed by so. Ra, which is a word, a name, which doesn't have a suffix letter. tame. So this one, as you can see here, tame in the screen, you can see this tame, which means the word that doesn't have suffix letter. It has been followed by ho. And finally, we see gyurt, which has ta, which is the post-suffix letter ta, also known as tak or taktar, is followed by to. So this is how the recompound particles follow each word. Like sometimes we see like there are two things that confuses us. The first thing is the first thing that confuses us is the fact that where should I use these particles? Where does this come into, you know? And the thing is that you should never ever memorize the sentence. Never do that. Believe me, it never helps you, you know, when you're memorizing the sentence, when you're reading the Tibetan sentence and then you're memorizing the sentence and you're reading the English translation of it, and then you're memorizing both the translation and the sentence, and then you think like, oh, now I can use it. But believe me, next time when I tell you to make a sentence, either you'll just write the same sentence that you have memorized, or you'll just be stuck there thinking, what can I do to actually write these sentences? And there are only two solutions. One is to learn the rules, the concept that you're learning in this class. These will only tell you the structure. Like in English grammar, if we say like, okay, here is the structure to make a to be verb sentence. We have subject, we have to be verb, and then probably we have the object. Similarly, in English, in Tibetan, we will have the same structure where I'll say, here, this is where you have to write the name. Here, you have to write the word. And this is where you have to write the connective particles. And this is how you will learn the rule. But the vocabulary will only depend on your own willingness to learn the vocabulary. You see, you'll have to dig up the dictionaries, or you have to start reading, or you have to start reading and fill up your vocabulary if you want to make sentences. And the more you have the vocabulary, and like I said, like before, we learn how to differentiate between names and word, right? So you can say, oh, this word, this, so you have learned you have a new name in your vocabulary, and then you can analyze, you can say, oh, this is a name, this is a word. Okay, now I've understood this is a name, and now put this into your category of name. And then you look at other word and you feel like, oh, this is a word. Then put it into your category of word. And through this lesson, you'll learn which are the connective particles. And then later on, if you want to make a sentence, you already have your inventory of names, your inventory of words, your inventory of connective particles. The only thing you have to do is, according to the sentence that you want to make, pick up the name, pick up the word, pick up the connective particles, fill in the blanks, and you have the sentence. And this is how you should learn to make sentences. Memorizing the sentence it's a nightmare, and it's probably not going to help you, you know? So therefore, in case of recompound particles, the concept is very simple. You only use it with a word that comes at the end of the sentence. It comes at either the end of the sentence, or it's like, for example, like in this one, it's just one single word. In this case, you don't have to think much. Just add at the end of this word, and this becomes one single narrative. In this case, you see it's a single sentence, so it comes after the last word of this sentence, and it comes according to the suffix. If the suffix is na, it becomes no. And this is your sentence and a single narrative. If you want to use it in a segment of a paragraph, just write and decide at which point this is the last thing I want to say about this thing. For example, if you were writing about, let's say, if you were writing about what is recompound particles, and then you kept writing, and you say, okay, this is going to be one narrative where I will talk about what are the 11 different recompound particles. Then you write about the 11 different recompound particles with example and everything. And then you say, okay, this is the segment where it's only about the 11 recompound particles. And then at the end, you just use any one of those 11 recompound particles to say that this is one segment, one section. Or if you are if you're willing to write more, if you want to write more, then you can write, like, for example, here you have an example. This is like an article. You can write articles about anything that you want. And then at the end of the article, you can say, okay, now this entire article was about this, and now it's done, I'm finished. Then you use with the last name or word, last name of the last statement. So last statement, so I mean, yes, last word. You just look at the name and you see, does it have ka, nga, ta, na, any one of the 10 suffix letters? Does it have the ta as the post suffix letters? Or does it not even have a suffix letter? Then you know the rules. The rules is like this, as stated here. Chagyoto, if it's the post suffix letter ta, use to. If it's without any suffix letter, use ho. Otherwise, use the suffix letters, use the recompound particles according to the suffix letter. So then you will know what to write there. And from that point, you'll understand that the entire narrative has ended. So yes, so this is about today's class. Before I ask you to ask me before we start asking questions, let me just, it would be nice if every one of you would send me your assignments. That would be really wonderful. And I could actually check them and send them to you so that you can see what kind of progress that you're making towards. And let me just go through this. So the assignment, let me go and answer the questions for the assignments. So the first question for yesterday's assignment was, what are the general classification of basic sound? And that is the vowel and the consonants. So let me just see. So vowels and the consonants. Okay. And the second one was, what do you mean by 7½ group of consonants? So we see that, and what do you mean by a half group? The answer is that the consonants, the 30 consonants, are classified generally in 30 groups. So generally in 30 groups, and the 30 consonants are generally classified in 7 and 8 groups, which contain in which all of them contain 7 consonants, except for the last one, which only consists of 2 consonants. And because the last group consists of only 2 consonants, it is known as half a group. So this is what the half a group is. Now write the 5 prefix letter, which is ka, ta, pa, ma, ha. And then so it says, what is the definition of suffix letters? Definition is, these are the letters that follows the foundation of names in name. So it states, so currently I'm just talking about the assignment that we had yesterday of the lesson 2 that we had yesterday, not the assignment that you're going to have for today's lesson. So it's the assignment, the first assignment that I gave you yesterday. Write the 30 foundation of names. Ka, ka, kanga, cha, cha, chanya, ta, ta, tana, papa, pama, za, za, zawa, shasa, haya, rala, shasa, ha'a. Okay, now the second was to choose the correct answer. So it says the post suffix letter ta follows the suffix letter, and the answer is na, ra, la. The B, the second question is the function of the 4 vowels, and the answer is C, to clarify the sound and changing the sound of the foundation of names. The third question was the vowel, subjoined letters, and the crown or head joined letters are ornamented on, and the answer is the foundation of name. And So another thing is the last question, where we have to identify which part of the name each of these are. So the first one is sim, starting with sim, masa sim. Sa is the foundation of name, ma the suffix, and sa the post suffix. Pak in the word pak, pa is the foundation of name, ka is the suffix. Ko sang a sang, in which ka is the prefix, sa is the foundation of name, and nga is the suffix letter. Rik, ra is the foundation of name, ka is the suffix. Pul, ha is the prefix, pa is the foundation of name, and la is the suffix letter. Okay, so this is the answer for the questions that I have, the assignment that I have sent you, and I will reveal the answer at the end of each lesson. So now I will give you, I'll have to give you only 5 minutes for questions. If you have any questions, please ask them regarding today's lesson.
Yes, Ganla, I have one question, please.
Yes.
For the recompound particles, for the sentences, like a paragraph, does it mean we can choose where to stop and add the particle?
Yes, so we can choose where we are going to stop and we're going to add the particles. So sometimes it could be a single word that it all depends like how much we're willing to talk about something, you know. If we're going to talk just a sentence about something, like for example, if someone asks, how are you? And we're just gonna say, I'm fine. If you're just willing to say fine, then you'll use a single word to before you end the narrative. If you want to say, yes, I'm fine, then you'll use a sentence to end the narrative. But then you want to go and talk a little more about how fine you are or how you're feeling, then you can either state it in few sentences, where at the end of the last sentence, you use the recompound particles, or at the end of, like, if you're willing to talk a lot about how you're feeling fine, then you can end it at the end of the last sentence, in which you will be talking about how fine you're feeling, you know. So it depends on your own self where you want to place the recompound particles, either after a word, after a sentence, after a few sentences, or after a paragraph.
But narrative here, does it mean like I'm talking to the third person about the first person of the context of telling a story that already happened? Or it can be, I talk to you directly.
Yes, so narrative means anything that you're going to say. So it doesn't just means to the third person. It can mean also to the first person that you're going to say this to. So it's just something that you say when I say narrative.
To emphasize.
To emphasize, or just as an answer to something.
Okay. Thank you, Ganla.
Even though I have written narrative, it's not something that you even have to say. It's something that you can also write, you know. It's just an expression, the narrative here. So therefore, it's anything that you're willing to talk. So when I say talk, it means more than just speaking. It also means talking about, writing about a particular topic.
Yes, I got it. Thank you, Ganla.
Okay, Patricia, I think you have raised your hand.
Ganla.
Yes.
So if I say I am well, so nga debo yin, then I'll end it with no. Is it nga debo yin no?
Nga debo yin no. So
you use it in writing as well as talking to each other also?
Yes, you can. So you can actually speak the written language if you wish to, you know, and you'll be making less grammatical mistake if you're actually speaking the written language. But okay, it sounds very unnatural to many people, because everyone is used to the more spoken language, you know. But
yeah, because like we don't we don't hear people using this recompound particle very often.
It's mostly only written and not spoken, but it can be used in while speaking also. And though it will seem more unnatural because not because it's wrong, it is unnatural because everyone is using the spoken language. But if you speak in written language, then you can actually use this in the written language and as a spoken language, and then you can use these, you know. But if you're doing it in a spoken language, then there's you cannot use these in the spoken language. It makes it sound very, very unnatural.
Okay, thank you, Genla.
Lasso. So if anyone has one more question, I can go for one more question. Otherwise, we will end it here, and please revise, and everyone will receive today's assignment after this class. So please send them to me through email so that I can check them, and then I can write to you where you have made the mistakes. So if you have any questions, please ask away. Otherwise, this will be it for today. And so, any questions? Lasso. So we will end it here today. So thank you very much for joining the class today, and I will see you tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Genla.
Welcome. Sunny Jae-yong.